to another Let's Talk with the Doc. I'm excited to be here this evening, as always. And I want to thank you for joining me on this broadcast as well. And I'm excited to have with me as my guest this evening, Mr. Oniel Francis. And I can't wait to find out what his story is because it is interesting. So we're gonna hear what the story is when I come back. So stay right there, my friends. When we come back, I'm gonna be talking to Mr. Francis to find out what is his real story. So hang in there. ORB Ministry presents Let's Talk with the Doc. Grace Without Borders podcast. A thought for you. Ask Pastor. And a whole lot more. You never know what's next or who will join the conversation. All right, my friends, here we are on another Let's Talk with the Doc, and I'm excited to be here as always, as I said. And I have with me this evening Mr. Oniel Francis. And Mr. Francis, welcome to, do I say Mr. Francis, Brother Francis? What Francis? Welcome to Let's Talk with the Doc.
Oh, thank you for having me. Well, it's normally brother or mister.
Okay.
No, it's meneer, which is actually Dutch for teacher.
Oh, Meneer.
Yes,
All right. Okay. So, Teacher Francis.
yes.
All right. So good to have you with me and Let's Talk with the Doc. I am excited to have you, and I'm kind of interested in finding out your story because, as I noticed, you were on the tagline. There was one time in your life when you were Jonah and you were Daniel, you were Moses in terms of character, attitude, action, behavioral pattern, whatever it is. All right. So I like to get to know my guests. So I don't know where you are from, what your story is. So I am as blank as everybody else, but I'd like to find out what's your story. So what can you tell me about Oniel? Where Oniel was born? What is family dynamics? Do you have siblings? Where did you fall in the middle? And we will take it from there bit by bit.
Okay. So I was born in the parish of St. Mary,
All
but
right.
I actually grew up in St. Catherine.
Okay.
So I had extended family in St. Mary, and that is actually where my mother was when I guess she conceived. But for all my, I would say, youth to early 20s, I grew up in St. Catherine in a small community called Glengoff in the hills of St. Catherine.
I know Glen Golf.
Yes,
I know
very
Glen Golf.
peaceful community. So that was high school. That was life up to college. So up to college, I was still there. I went to Michael College.
Okay.
Um, I I'm connected to my extended family, but I grew up in a nuclear family. It was really my mother, my father, and I was the only boy. I had three sisters. So, growing up, I was a very quiet boy.
Okay. So where you fall? Where do you fall in the sibling standing?
Well, I would be second to last. I have two older sisters. I have a younger sister.
Uh huh. Okay.
Um, yeah, my younger sister, both herself and me, we decided to go the route of education. So
Hmm.
both of us are teachers. So
Oh.
she
Okay.
actually practices her trade in the UK.
Okay, all right. We'll find out more. We'll find out more about when did you decide and how did you come to that. So, tell me a little bit about, like, okay, you're born in St. Mary, grew up in St. Catherine. Did you grow with your siblings? Do you all grow together?
Except for my older sister, who spent most of her time growing up with my grandmother. Yes, I
Okay,
grew up together with my other siblings.
okay. So I'm kind of I'm a curious guy. You know, I'm a curious guy. You know, what you're second to the last, you said.
Yes.
So what was it like for younger brother, bigger brother? You're in the middle, and for what I know, I having three sons, I know the child in the middle kind of live a little bit of isolated life, kind of. You know, do their own thing because the older one is a little bit older, and then the younger one is getting more attention. So the one in the middle kind of fend for themselves, kind of figure out their own life. That is kind of norm. Yours might be exception, but that's a kind of norm. So what was it like for O'Neill in the middle? Girl
Uh,
in front, girl behind, boy
we're
in the middle.
behind. Yeah. It was, I guess, somewhat close to that, with the exception that because I was the only boy, my mother took a special, I would say, a mother hen kind of role over me. So I was always the apple of my mother's eye. Well,
Okay.
that is until my younger sister came around.
Exactly. That's what I was
Well,
thinking.
she was really the apple of my father's eye.
Okay.
But my mother was always someone that was in my corner, no matter what. You know, ever since growing up, even to today, my mother is always in my corner, no matter what.
Okay, you know, mothers and mothers are boys' favorite, and boys are mothers' favorite. Generally, there are
Yeah,
exceptions, but generally, they like say, you know, my one boy. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. So yeah, they tend to put a little bit of extra emphasis on it because the boy
yeah.
comes dear to the heart.
Yes, and to be honest, I would like to think that even throughout high school, I did well, and it was not for me really. Me doing well in high school was for my mother.
Really,
I really wanted to make her
you want
proud.
to make her proud.
Yes, I really wanted to make my mother proud. So um, I remember even when I got to fifth form and I did my C6, um, because I was not a problematic child,
Hmm.
my parents didn't keep very close tabs on me. So when my father went to the school to pick up my CXC results, he was shocked. He was saying, "Yes, you know,
So
I
so
know
so
you."
so let's back up a little before we get to CXE because that is kind of advanced.
Okay.
Right? The CXC is kind of advanced, right? All right. Tell me a little bit more about the younger side. Okay, young boy growing up, going to primary. I mean, I don't know if you go basic school, but
Yeah.
elementary, early. Okay, so you're one of the privileged guys. Can everybody go to basic school? You know,
Basic
not
school.
everybody go to basic school in the young time. So you're privileged to go to basic school. What was it like for you going to basic school?
I remember just I remember going to basic school with my two cousins because I have two cousins who are about the same age.
Hmm.
I can remember, I don't remember school exactly, but I can remember walking home from school some evenings. Um, and it was always the three of us really. And we basically we went through primary, basic school, primary, it was the three of us. I went to primary school a little earlier than they were
Hmm.
because my parents had moved. When I was around that age, 4 or 5, my parents had moved closer to school. And because of that, or the primary school, we had one primary school in the community, and that was called Grateful Hill Primary School. So I was very close to the primary school. Therefore, and my sister, my older sister, she was also going. So it was a little easier for my parents to send me to school with her. So I started primary school a little early. Um, Primary school was, I would say, uneventful. There weren't a lot of things happening. Um, there wasn't. anything much. I remember that I had a very strict headmaster,
Mm.
a gentleman by the name of Mr. Bowes. And a number of persons, because of how strict and how rigid he was, a number of persons, even us as kids, we didn't like him. But the thing was that there are a number of things that I hold dear and that I practice today that came from him.
Okay.
One of the, and I say this to even my students today, one of the messages that he thought that stuck even to today, he said, we used to have devotions, and our devotions was always, I loved it because it was always a learning experience. There would always be something that he's teaching us. And one day he was teaching us a story about lying
Lying.
and about speaking the truth all the time. And I remember he said something and it stuck with me. He said, speak the truth all the time. Worst case scenario is that people won't like what they hear, but always speak the truth. And I held on to that. And even when I went home, I began practicing that.
Mm.
And I realized that it had an effect on how my parents and my siblings saw me.
Mm.
Because now I was the boy who they could depend on to always tell the truth.
Okay.
So that had a positive spin. And because I think I got that reaction, it stuck with me to today.
That's good. That's good. That's good. All right. So you became a marked child for character.
Yeah.
Character. All right. I remember. I remember when I was going to school, like elementary. I think they used to say, speak the truth and speak it
And
ever,
speak it ever,
cause it
cost
what it
what it
will.
will.
He
He
who
who
speak,
hides the
he who
wrong he
hide the
does,
wrong he did, or do the wrong
does
things,
the
still
wrong
something like
thing
that.
still. Yes, that
Wow.
was it.
Oh my God. You remember I can't remember even that. That's a long, long time ago. But I still remember that. All right, my friends, I'm talking to Oniel Francis, and I can't wait to hear his story as he grew up to become a young man and trying to resist God. We're gonna get to that point. So hang in there. I'm just probing to see where we started from. All right. So let me welcome my friends who are joining us on internet radio. My friends are joining us on TikTok tonight. So I'm streaming all over the place. So and my regular YouTube and Facebook friends. So we are spreading it around. All right. So give me a little bit of insight. How did your sisters act to use speaking truth and speaking it ever? How did they relate to that? Did they feel like they have to follow that example, or did they feel it was a threat if they didn't speak truth? You're gonna expose them if they didn't.
I think after a while, people kind of got used to me. My older sisters, they were a bit of a rebel, but my younger sister she was closer to my personality. Even to today, she's closer to my personality. So you had a half of the family, because there were four of us, a half of the family who were the two older ones who were basically doing their own thing. And us younger ones, we were mainly closer to home. We were always closer to our parents. We were not the ones who would stray far from the nest, so to speak.
Mhm.
So our parents, I guess, after a while, they kind of settled with the idea that this was a dynamic in terms of, how their children were. Children were.
How far are you from your older sisters?
My oldest sister is 7 years older than me. My second oldest sister, she's 5 years older than me, and I am 5 years older than my youngest sister.
Oh, so you're a really big boy for your younger sister.
Yes.
Really big brother. Because 5 years back then, it's like a whole lot of years.
Oh yes.
Yeah,
And back in the country those days, you would, as the older brother, you'd be responsible for so many things. I would
big
pick her
time,
up
big time.
from school in the evening. I would go and pick her up. I would, when I brought her home, and around say 6, 7 years old, when she was about that age, I was around 11. And that was when I actually learned to cook. Because when I picked her up from school, we were home alone and we had to eat snacks. And so I would start off first by making banana chips.
Oh,
I
really?
would slice the banana,
Oh,
and you
really?
fry the banana. And maybe for a few years there was nothing more serious than that. And then because of that, my mother took me into the kitchen.
So you're really experimental.
Yeah.
Wow, banana chips. That's fine. So you weren't afraid of hot oil. I mean, you're a big boy up to
No, yeah,
then.
my
Yeah,
mother kind of taught me because she
yeah.
really took me into the kitchen and she didn't because what she said really was instead of looking after a snack and waiting on me to come and cook, if you can help yourself, then it would be great.
Right.
And so I learned to cook small things that around age 14 I was doing very small meals. And by the time I got to 16 or 15, I was actually cooking for the family.
Wow. Well, that's big boy. I can tell everybody that I said it to some people and they didn't understand what that meant. When I was 8 years old, I was able to cook green banana without froth. Cook clean green
Oh
banana.
yeah,
Yeah,
that was an
because my
accomplishment.
because my mother instill industrious character in me. You learn to wash your clothes, learn to iron your clothes, make sure you can cook and clean because you don't want no girl come find them fractal over your head. That was my mother's mentality.
Yes, that's how my mother as well. That's my mother as well.
All right, all right. So you grew up in that, and you gone to you moved from basic into elementary. I know you said when you get to high school, well, going into not high school, getting out of into the CXE area to go
Yeah.
to high school, you worked very hard on that because you wanted to make your mother proud. So that was like, I'm gonna do this for my mom. When did O'Neill know what he wanted to become?
Oh,
Who
that
who was your idol, mentor? So some of you want to emulate.
is a very tough question.
Okay.
Because who I wanted to become apparently didn't match up to who God wanted me to become.
Oh, all right, all right. We're
And
gonna hear about that.
yeah, that in and of itself it's a story that began in high school.
Interesting.
In high school, in third form, at age of 13, I gave my life to Christ.
Okay.
And this was, I think, a year before that, my parents had given their lives to Christ.
Okay.
And even though I was going to church prior to that, which my grandmother and so on, I was now going to church a little more often because my parents were now Christians. And when I gave my life to Christ, I always had in my head that I wanted to be a geologist. That was my dream. That was my goal. All my C-Sec subjects, I picked them with that career in mind.
So I'm curious. I'm curious as to what triggered that desire for geology. What triggered that? What fascinates you about that? Fascinated you then?
It was based, I think, largely on my love of documentaries and science.
Okay. Okay.
So I remember there was, I think it was a Friday night when Star Trek
Okay.
would be on TV.
Okay.
Now, at that half an hour or so on when Star Trek was on, I was allowed to basically own the TV.
Oh
But
wow.
nobody else in the family wanted to watch. They were saying that with all those funny creatures and so on. I was the only person who found that fascinating.
So they give you the TV.
So I would have the TV. In fact, my
Well,
father
well,
said,
well. Back then, there wasn't a whole other channel, so it's
yes,
either
well,
or.
if I'm watching that one day, and I was always a TV person. And because my father actually bought a TV to ensure to keep me in the house, so I didn't leave the house because of the television set.
Okay. Okay.
So I would
Okay.
I would watch a lot of documentaries. So science just became this thing I was just fascinated with. So my love for geology stemmed from watching those documentaries and seeing, different, and I just fell in love with that aspect of science.
Okay. All right. All right. So from an early age, and now you're going to, you stepping up into going for your, what they call it now, your in the pursuit of your sexy
6 years.
subjects, but when I was young, they call it, subjects and stuff like that. When I
Yes.
was, all right. So that was your pursuit to go dig deeper
Geology.
into that.
Yes.
All right. And tell me now the impact your mother had on you to the point that you wanted to do this for her. You want to come out doing good just for her.
Just, I think
I mean,
the
I'm sure bottom line is going to be for your benefit, but you just want to make her walk the community and feel proud of her
I
one
feel good.
boy.
In first form of high school, I rem- I went to Oberlin High.
Okay.
Now, Oberlin had a system that it was a kind of tier system where the classes were spelled out in the name of the school. OBER. So O normally contained the brighter kids.
Really?
Yes. And B second brightest and so on and so forth. Um, at first form, they would just mix everyone. And then from first form, they would basically give everybody the same material and allowed us to kind of pull ourselves up to show who would get to the highest scores, brighter classes, and so on.
So you have to pull yourself away
Pull
from
yourself
the
up.
group.
Pull yourself
Okay.
up.
Okay.
I entered Oberlin in R, so it's OBER. So basically, fourth from the top. And I remember that they would have 2 report periods. And that first report period, my cousin was lucky enough that he got to Oberlin in O. So he was placed in O initially.
Wow.
But everybody, we were basically being taught the same content.
Okay.
And I remember that very first report card meeting when all your parents, everybody came in. There were 34, I think, students in my class, and I was 23rd. My cousin, I believe, was second in his class.
Wow.
I don't remember what my other cousin got because all of us got to high school at the same time. We're coming from primary school over to high school, same high school. And I remember when my mother got my report, I remember the look on her face. And even though she was happy for my cousins, I could see that I had somehow broken her heart.
Oh.
What kind of, I guess, maybe made everything kind of accumulate was I saw what my mother did. My mother, in primary school, my mother worked at the Kingston Public Hospital. She worked in the linen room department. And what she would basically do there was to basically wash and iron the clothes that the doctors and the patients wore. And I saw how hard my mother worked, especially when I went there like maybe a day off or something. And I would maybe go into Kingston to help her. She's going to buy something. I would go there to help her, or so on. And I realized how hard she worked. And I realized that basically my mother she was taking dirty clothes, blooded clothes with feces, all that. That was what she was doing. And she would do everything possible to try to ensure that she made ends meet. It sometimes got so bad that I had a saving, one of those saving pants. It was one of those metal ones.
Right.
And my mother would borrow money from me to get to work.
Oh.
And that day, when she collected that report and I saw the look on her face, I said to myself, I will never, ever allow my mother to feel this way again.
So did you feel in looking back in retrospect then, did you feel like you could have done better? Do you feel like there was some negligence on your part, not working hard enough, or did you feel like you give it your best and it wasn't good enough?
No, I know for sure I wasn't doing.
You didn't give it your best shot.
I just played the entire term.
Okay, all
I
right.
was just playing.
Okay, all right.
Because you have 2 report card periods in first form, and I came 23rd. That was the Christmas term, at the end of the Christmas. And by the end of the year, I was fourth, same class, fourth, moved up one place. And
Mhm.
then second, first. I never ever, I kept getting better and better. So I knew that I had what it took to do well.
So you just double down and make a,
I just
and just
decided to
change the
work.
whole thing.
Yes.
Wow. Now I'm curious about the next report.
The next report, I was fourth.
When your
Same
mama
class.
saw, when your mother saw the next report, how did she react to
Oh,
that?
no. The interesting thing about my mother is that even I know she was proud, but she didn't show it. My mother said to me, "Oh, you did a little better, but you can
Mhm.
come first."
Okay, okay, all right, all right,
Yes. And
okay.
then I came second the next, by second form, I came second. And she was like, still can come first.
Wow.
So I kept on working.
So she really believed in her boy.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So when you finally get to the point where she knew you could have been, what was her reaction to that now?
To be honest, with regards to because I finally came first in third form. And at that time, that was when she finally told me, okay, yes, but no, you're heading on to fourth form. Because yes, I've achieved the first, but that's not the aim. So I had to keep pushing.
So she's tough mama.
She's tough mama with love.
Tough mama with love. I get it. I
And
get it.
I, my mother, I'm not sure. She says things and it resonates. For example, I remember my behavior changed when my mother said to me, I was about maybe 10 years old. And she said to me, "You're a big boy now. You don't need to give trouble because I don't want to beat you." And automatically that made me think, okay, I don't want to get beaten either. So I just started to behave.
All right. All right. So what I'm getting out of this conversation, even in the early days, that you have been a well thinking person. You think and act on it, because just okay, I can do better. I'm gonna have to do better. I'm not gonna break my mother's heart again. I'm not gonna be this negligent child who didn't step up to the plate and do what I know I can do. Now I'm not gonna do anything to make my mother beat me either. So that is kind of mature thinking, processing things and say, okay, I'm gonna be the adult in the room. I'm gonna be the grown up. So that is kind of really good thinking. All right. So I'm seeing that as okay. This is a rational thinking person from young days.
I think because I was the only boy, I had a lot of time to think. I had a lot of time by myself.
Yeah.
I really didn't have another male my age to play with until fourth form. And my cousin, he came to live with us. So he lived with
Okay.
us fourth form, fifth form. So
Okay.
that was really the first time when, even though I would visit my grandmother and sometimes he would be there, but in terms of having a male companion, someone your age you could relate to, I didn't have that. So I spent most of my, because what my sisters were doing, I didn't want to do. So I spent most of my days either reading,
Typical.
watching TV, something like that.
All right. All right. Okay. All right. My friends, I'm talking to Oniel Francis, and we're just probing the early days of his life, because I can't wait to get to the point where he was once like a Jonah, once like Daniel, once like Moses, and then what he eventually become. So I can't wait to get to those steps. All right. So you made your mother proud. You came through. You did well in high school. And where did O'Neill's life go after that? How did you progress next steps in your life?
After leaving Oberlin at fifth form, I went on to Wilmer's Boys because Oberlin didn't have a sixth form.
Okay.
So I went to Wilmer's Boys and I did sixth form there. Um, From sixth form, the idea in my mind was that I wanted to go to the University of West Indies
Okay.
because my aim was to study geology. Um, After leaving sixth form, I remember, and by this time I was very active in the church. I was a
You
part
know,
of
I just said that. Let me back up a little bit. I just said that because I remember you say you got saved like about 13.
about 13.
Okay.
Yes.
So not to stick up in where you are, because I like to get these stories. How did you get church influence? What impact did church have on your life in terms of family? How did that start?
Well, my family has always been oriented in church. We have always been, even though my parents, when I was younger, my parents didn't go to church that regularly.
Mhm.
But because I spent a lot of time with my grandmother and she was married to a deacon who eventually became a pastor.
Mm, okay.
So church has always been a part of our life.
Okay.
Um, I was still required to go to church, even though my parents would not go,
Mm,
because, well, that was the church of my grandmother
mm-hmm.
and also my aunts and so on. And by this time we were close enough to church that it would take me like 2 minutes to get to church if I walked
Wow.
from home. So I would be going to church constantly. How I gave my life to Christ was, I remember there was a rally, and I don't remember who the preacher was, but that particular, I think it was a Sunday night, I knew that if I did not give my life, I was old enough to know that, right from wrong. I've been to church long enough. I knew about God. Um, but I just felt this overwhelming conviction that if I did not give my life to Christ, that hell would be my path. And I did not want that for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember even days leading up to my baptism, I was thankful waking up each morning
Wow.
because I wanted to get to the point where I crossed over that line and got baptized. Church, I would say, had a huge impact on who I was because I wasn't because I didn't have male influences much around me in terms of I didn't speak much. So when I actually started to speak was when I went to church and I got involved in youth ministries.
Mm, okay.
And from youth ministries, I was placed in the public relations department. And I looked forward to doing public relations every Sunday because we did it different. Because my church by this time, by say age 14, 15, my church was maybe split down the middle in terms of older to young people, and all the young people were about my age. So it was just a joy to go to church and fellowship, and if people were around your age, and you got a chance to be recognized, you got a chance to be placed in things where it forced you to come out of that shell. It forced you to learn how to speak. It forced you to learn how to, participate in Christian debates. My church was a Church of God of Prophecy, which was, you would describe it as a Holy Ghost filled church.
Okay. So just FYI, I'm a Church of God of Prophecy bishop.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Okay, I just retired last year after 46 years of ministry. So
Okay.
I'm a Church of God of Prophecy guy. So we got some things in common. It's a good
Come on.
idea. Some things in common. Okay.
But
So
I grew up in Glen Church of God of Prophecy.
oh, okay,
Yes.
okay. I have gone up to Glen Gulf Church of God of Prophecy once in long time in my life. So, so that's way, way, way.
Possibly I was there. I was possibly.
I don't know. I don't know if you were even born yet because that was like
Oh, okay,
like
okay.
like 40 odd years ago. You know, that maybe
Oh,
40 something years ago.
yeah,
So
I'm 40
that's
something, so I yeah, I
okay.
would be
Yeah,
in
yeah.
church
You
at
may
that
be
time.
baby running around in
Yeah,
up in.
I would be in church at that
All
time.
right. Okay. All right. So this is interesting. My friends, I'm talking to Oniel Francis, and those are my friends on TikTok and Pray and Praise Radio, jhay.com. Welcome to the conversation. Let's Talk with the Doc is streaming on these platforms tonight, which is not the norm, but I am happy to spread a little bit around, a little bit around. All right. So, okay, so Christian, it's interesting that a guy who never talked much, joined the public relations because life, life completely turned around.
Yes.
Christianity kind of revolutionized the life and make a difference. The insight or the perspective changed. All right, so now you're in the public relations, you're doing things different, you're getting involved in your youth ministry church, and your life is moving forward. Now, what's your next step?
Um, in church, I I was very close to my pastor.
Hmm.
And I think because I was close to my pastor, uh, I developed my spiritual life. My spiritual life improved, I would say, at a very fast rate.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I remember around somewhere around college. Before I went to well, before I got there, I was encouraged to enter ministry.
Mm. Okay.
This was a terrifying thought.
Okay. So your pastor, you had a good relationship with your pastor. He saw something in you,
Yeah.
and
Well, actually, it was a she. I'm not sure if
was a
you know
she.
Angela
She.
Ward.
Okay. 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 My
Yes.
bad. My bad.
So she encouraged me to go into ministry, but for me that was terrifying.
Okay.
Um, I loved the idea of working with people. I loved the idea of encouraging. I did Bible studies. I did not mind doing those things in the church, but to the point where, because she would say to me, I think you would be a great pastor. That for me was terrifying.
Okay. So she wanted to breed you in the terms and
Yeah.
shape you into it. Okay. So my curiosity is, why was it so terrifying to you? What was your observation? Or what did you know of the responsibility, accountability? What terrified you?
It was not so much being accountable to the people, but more being accountable to God. And
Mm.
for me, I have seen instances of pastors failing.
Okay.
And, the Bible tells us, who will be unto, pastors that lead my sheep astray. For me, the idea of having the responsibility over that many people and my actions potentially leading them to heaven, to hell, I didn't want that response. That was
So
a burden I found frightening.
so O'Neill never fully trusted himself.
Never, never.
Okay, okay, okay. All right, I see why. All right. So how did you handle that after your pastor say, I think you have potential?
I didn't say no because I had such a great degree of respect for my pastor. I wouldn't dare to say no to her,
Okay,
but I was
okay,
scared.
okay.
Um, but I guess that would take me to after high school, after sixth form, still in church. I was involved in youth ministry. I was involved in men's ministry. While at sixth form, at the end of sixth form, the idea was, let me jump to university.
Mm-hmm.
And this was the period of my life when I had, I would say, my first real encounter with God. Even at that stage, even though, yes, I was working in the church, my first real encounter happened outside of the church.
Okay.
I'd finished sixth form, I was awaiting my results, and now it was time to go to the university and make my application. You had to, at that time, there were no online applications. You had to go fill up your form, drop it off
Right.
manually. And my cousin was working at the university in the admissions department.
Hmm.
When I went there, because at this time, I had constantly stated, God, if this is not what you want for me, then show me a sign. Don't let it happen.
So
Now,
you
on
reckon
that,
you're developing a Gideon attitude here right now?
yes, on that particular day, before I went to up to UA, my prayer was, God, if this is not what you want for me, don't let me get through today.
Hmm. Okay.
I'd forget. Honestly, I forgot about that prayer. Went up to UA, and when I saw my cousin, the prayer clicked back. And I'm like, okay, this is what God wants because my cousin's here. So I know I'm going to get through.
Uh-oh.
So I didn't even rush to get in the line. I was one of the last persons because I was sure.
Everybody got somebody somewhere,
Yeah.
right?
So when I went up, fill up my form, everything went up. Um, she took it and she gave it to, I think, a supervisor, something like that. And then I was there waiting a bit, and then she brought back the form to me. And she said, Oniel, you filled the form out wrong.
Uh-oh.
She said, no, I said to her, okay, can I have another one? Because at the time you had to pay for your form, but I had enough money to pay for another form. So she said to me, you can come back and do it tomorrow because my supervisor is saying they're not taking anybody else for the day. Because I had deliberately waited until last.
Oh.
So I could no longer do
Oh.
another form. I had to come back the next day.
Oh.
I'm like, okay, no problem. This was my dream. This is what I wanted to do. A little delay in my mind, no problem.
I know because cousin is here, I still feel the guarantee is
Still
gonna
feel.
happen, sir.
So I walked down to the gate. At that time, it was one of the big yellow buses. They had just come to Jamaica. People used to call them the dog bus.
Wow.
It had a big thing on the side of the bus. It was actually a panther or a cheetah, but it looked like a dog, so people said dog bus. Now, I went in the bus. I was in very good spirits going home. And I was sitting like 4 benches from the back. And while I was going down, I heard a voice say to me, didn't you ask that if this is what I wanted for you, today is the day you would get through? And I looked behind me and there was nobody there. And I was like, the fear that overcame me because I knew immediately that was God.
Mm-hmm.
And my cousin was waiting for me. And I never turned back to the UA campus again because I knew that was not God's plan for my life.
So you didn't go back the next day?
I did not go back because of that reason.
My goodness.
Now, at this point, I was really not sure what I wanted to do.
What?
Because this was my dream. This was the only thing that I was thinking about from, I don't know, maybe about third form. This was the only thing. And so I had my subjects. So I was able to get a job as a pre-trained teacher at the same primary school that I went to.
Wow.
So I was saving my money, and I was just bouncing ideas, through my head. I thought about UTech. I thought there were a number of things going through my mind. And I went to convention that year. And while I was there enjoying convention, a young lady, at that time, I've seen her, but I didn't know who she was. She came up to me that day in convention. And she said to me, God wants you to go to Michael.
Hmm.
And he says, when you go there, you will be the Pope.
Uh-oh.
Now, two things rang out for me from that statement. I didn't answer her, I didn't say anything. But in my mind, two things stood out. The first one was at the time, the Pope was being touted as the Antichrist. So for
Yeah.
somebody to call you the Pope, that was never a title you wanted to be attached to your name. So that was reason
Okay.
number one. I was like,
Okay. All right.
Reason number two, remember I said I was working as a pre-trained teacher at the time.
Uh-huh.
These children were giving me hell.
Wow.
And I decided this was the only profession I know I will not be a part of. I can't deal with this.
Wow.
So she's telling me to go to a teacher's college and to get a title for a position that in my mind was the Antichrist. So for me, this was a no-no.
Wow.
So, of course, I did all my
You know,
applications.
I remember those mentality growing up
Yeah.
as especially Church of God of Prophecy.
Mm-hmm.
Especially Church of God of Prophecy with the one church mentality,
Yes.
the great speckled bird, the only church where all other flocks are gonna flow into her. And yeah, we could see the Pope from the Catholic system as I could see that mentality, the antichrist thing. So of course, just the idea, the concept of being Pope,
Oh,
yeah,
yes.
rings.
So that for me was a no-no.
Oh my good Lord.
But strangely enough, I applied anyhow. And Michael was the first and the only tertiary institution that called me.
Wow.
And I went for the fun of it because I
Really?
know this was not I didn't want to go there. I didn't this not was not what I wanted to do. And at that time, I didn't think I had the money.
So were you going hoping not to succeed?
But I didn't have the money.
Okay.
So I just went.
All right. All right.
And I know my parents didn't have the money either.
Okay.
But you see, God had a plan. Now, strangely enough, I didn't have the money. But this was this was 1999, this was a year when the government of Jamaica had done a salary negotiation with teachers. And there was a retroactive salary that was due to teachers.
Excuse me.
And that retroactive salary was enough to pay my school fee for Michael, for boarding, for everything for the entire year.
What?
It was enough also that I could go to downtown and do a little shopping because Michael, you had to wear
Uniform. Yeah.
semi-formal wear. The men
Right.
had to dress in ties and shirts
Yeah. Yeah.
and so on. So I went downtown and I went shopping.
Wow.
And
So
I
so
said,
how long a retroactive pay was that? How many years was that?
it was about 1.5. But it was enough. Along with my salary, it was enough
Wow.
to pay my school fee because how Michael worked at the time is that the government paid a half of the fee and you paid the other half. But for boarding, it was a little extra. But because I lived so far in the country, I could not travel. So I had to board.
Wow.
So for me, that was like, oh God, this.
Are you kidding me, God?
Yeah.
Is this for real?
I said, okay, let me try this. Let me try this. The strange part about it, and I say this to my students even today, when I went downtown, I had such a small amount of money left that I had to buy, they had a 3-for-1 special that you would buy 3 items. You would get it at a particular price, but you had to take the items at different sizes.
Oh wow.
So I had shirts that and pants that fit me perfectly on one day.
And a
I
little
had
bit
shirts
loose
and
the
pants
next day.
that were too big the other day and too small the other day. And these were the clothing I wore for 3 years of my 3 years of my this is what I wore.
So one day you were squeezing and one day you were breezing.
Lovely, and one day I was
One day squeezing,
breezy.
one day breezing.
Yes, this
Oh,
was my
good.
day.
That's interesting. That's interesting.
Um, First year of Michael went very well. I found brothers and sisters in Christ. Um, I joined the UCCF, and by the end of the first year, I was appointed assistant to the Pope.
So why did they call it Pope? Why did they call the
It
person
was just a
Pope?
title. It
Just
was
a title.
because Michael is, I think Michael is an Anglican institution, and therefore, like the Catholic, they have the same titles.
Okay. Okay. Wow.
So it was a title given to you as the head of all the religious fraternities on the campus. So I
Wow.
would be the person that was in charge of the Adventists, the Jehovah's Witness, the Baptist, the Methodist. I was the person who was in charge. I also was a person who would plan devotions. I would, put the program together. Any little thing like that that took place, I was the person who was in charge of doing that. I
That's
was
interesting.
also um, the vice president of UCCF. Now, it was normal that the assistant to the Pope automatically went over to the Pope.
Mm.
I did not know that it was really an interview process until the end of my second year. So at the end of my second year, I did an interview to become Pope. I did an interview with another young man. Now, this was another one of the major experiences with God for me, because the person who did the interview was a lecturer who I did an elective. I did religious studies as my elective. And that lecturer and we had countless altercations in class
Mm.
because he would come to class oftentimes and he would basically try to turn people away from God. So he would be pointing out errors in the Bible and so on. For me, I knew the God who I served because I had experienced God more than one times.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, what that propelled me to do was to go to the library. So every time he pointed something out, I went to the library and I did my research. So when we met in class again, I would have my research and we would have it out. So we had this relationship that was, I knew I wasn't liked by him. For me, it didn't matter because I knew I was defending what I believed in. It just came to the point that he was now the person conducting the interview, and he was the person, because he was a chaplain of the school. So he was the person conducting the interview, and he was also the person who made the final decision as to who Pope was.
Wow.
And so we had, I think it was close to the final devotion of second year. And maybe the final or the second to last devotion. And that was the devotion when they would announce, all the senior positions for all the second years who were going into third year.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember standing in the assembly that morning and they made the announcement, and my name was not called.
Oh.
Nope, I was not Pope. And people came up to me and they said to me, "Why didn't you apply for the role?" because they could not believe that I had interviewed for the position and not gotten the
Yeah,
position.
yeah. Okay. So they said there is no way you could
He
have
was
done that and
asking
didn't
him,
come.
why didn't you go up for the role?
Okay.
And I went outside, and I remember everybody left, and there was a bench under, I believe it was a mango tree that was close enough to the auditorium. And I laid on that bench and I began to cry. And I looked up to heaven and I said, God, I wish I could hate you.
Uh-oh.
I said, God, I wish I could hate you. How could you let me believe for 2 years that this was the plan that you had for me to get to this point and realize that it was not true.
Wow.
And at that point, I felt as if I was just going, I guess, through the motions. I felt, because my purpose was, I didn't want to really become a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
It was, for me, the belief that this was what God wanted. And I was working with God's plan.
Hmm.
And so I think 2 or so days passed, because I studied mathematics and social studies at Michael. So I was doing a mathematics exam. I remember that much. And the young man who was chosen for the role, I saw him at the door. And he was beckoning to me to come. Now, this was the last person I wanted to see, much less talk to. I didn't want to see him. So I put my head down in my paper and I pretended as, I had a lot to do. And even when I finished the paper, I pretended to be writing just to see him, because I wanted him to leave. And as soon as I scanned the area and I didn't see him, I went and I gave my paper up. And when I stepped outside, he was there.
Ah.
And he said to me,
spread your bed in hell, behold, is there.
Yeah. He said to me, I have something I need to say to you, but you need to follow me to the vice principal's office.
Wow.
So I said, okay. So we went to the vice principal's office. And when we went there, the vice principal, she said to us, why are you here? And I said, Miss, I don't know. And he began to talk. He said, Miss, when I got the position of Pope in devotion, all the students said, if I am Pope, they would have nothing to do with devotion and they would not be a part of UCCF.
Wow.
And he said, Miss, I went and I prayed. And that evening when I was in my room, I know I was not sleeping. He said the Holy Spirit spoke to him and said to him, the reason people reacted this way to you is because I wanted you to see that you were not fulfilling the purpose for which I sent you to Michael. Now that you know that you need to step your game up, well, I'm paraphrasing for him.
Mm-hmm.
Go and give the position to the person it rightfully belongs to.
Wow.
And that's how I became Pope of Michael.
What? So this is all mix up. Now this sound like Bible time, right? This whole experience sound like Bible time, like something God instituted, orchestrated, but have to allow it to go through
True.
some weird process to prove something. Now, no, that is kind of interesting. That's very so. The guy proved that he's also spiritually aware.
Yes.
Spiritually aware, because and maybe he's he has his spiritual antennas up so he can hear, and apparently he was not driven by his ego either.
True, because he could have, he didn't have to say anything to me.
Yeah, he wasn't driven by his ego. At least he was listening that God is saying, okay. And interesting, because all of the other students said, we're shocked that you didn't get this. How did that happen? And they're saying, and as a result of, because they thought you would have been,
Yes.
their
I
resistance,
thought so too. To be honest, I thought so too.
yeah, their resistance was against this guy. And so clearly that he realized it doesn't even make sense to hold on to this because I wouldn't even have anybody doing it with me. And then beyond that, the Lord is speaking to him, said, here is the reason why. And said, it comes back to you. Now, I'm curious about the guy who overlooked, or the person who overlooked you and gave it to him because of some relational thing or some grudge or some defiance approach. How did that person react? So maybe give us the
Well,
next steps.
yeah, I didn't know. I don't know anything about how he reacted. I honestly, I didn't have class with him again. We didn't really interact. We didn't speak. So I honestly don't know anything about what he did or said or whatever after that.
Wow. Wow. Did you see him still?
Yeah, he was on campus. He was a cap. He was the campus's chaplain.
And you and him don't have a relation, no communication.
No, not regards to
Wow.
that. Not regards to anything like that.
So you just go about do your Pope thing and
I
he
just
just go
I just
about
did
doing
my
his thing.
he did his thing.
Oh my goodness. Wow. Wow. All right. So now what was Oniel's conclusion now? Did you say, God, you got a sense of humor?
No,
Or
well,
did you have to put me all of this? Did you have to make it go all this way? What's the motive behind that, God?
for me, it grounded my faith in Christ. Um, and I think God allowed that to happen because He knew that there would be periods in my life where I would need an experience like that to look back and to hold on to.
Wow. 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 So that feel like, that felt in retrospect that God was giving you a stabilizer on your feet to say, okay,
Something like
you see how I work this out. So I'm so that is like a Gideon kind of experience. I'm taking away all the doubts out of your mind. I'm affirming and confirming in your mind that this is exactly what I wanted, even though sometimes you thought it slip out of your hand, it's never gonna
that.
happen. But here we go around circles and come right back to where I wanted. That's
And
interesting.
that helped in terms of the fear and the doubts I had before. That experience, along with other experiences that I had on that campus, because there were other encounters on that campus. But everything that I experienced at Michael helped me when I went back to my local church.
Mm-hmm.
So when I went back to my local church, I actually started to go to 41 Olaba, where they had, I think it was on Saturdays, we had seminary or something to that effect. So I
Okay.
actually started classes. I was now at the point where I was accepting that, this is something that, God may want me to do. So I started classes maybe about a year or two after I came back from Michael. And that was going okay.
So you come up from Michael now. What were your pursuit? You're going in pursuit of ministry? Are you taking what your pastor told you she saw in you, or were you still aspiring for something else? Or did you just say, God, it's up to you?
Well, it was no more so, God, it's up to you.
Okay.
So when I went back, I now got involved because I don't think I was involved in men's ministry before I went to college. I think it was after I came back that I became involved in men's ministry. Because I was now going to seminary, I was appointed as a lay minister.
Mm-hmm.
I would know, I think somewhere around that period, I did my first sermon. Things were looking up spiritually, but the devil was doing other things.
Okay. Which he always do. That's his
Yeah.
assignment.
So in my personal life, that was where the devil decided, listen, this is where I'm going to work on. This is where I'm going to get you.
Wow.
Because there was, while going to Michael, there was a young lady also from prophecy, but from another prophecy, who I think at that time I was not necessarily in love with this young lady, but I was in love with the way she loved God. When you read about the virtuous woman,
Mm-hmm.
she fitted that the characteristics, and in my head, this is the person I would want for my wife.
Mm.
She seemed to have seen the same thing in me, and therefore we decided, okay, we're going to court. We didn't really talk much, to be honest, because she wasn't very far from me. I was. We didn't have telephones like that back then in the country
Of
either.
course not.
But at the time, she was going to UTech
Okay.
while I was going to Michael. We were both involved in UCCF. And during UCCF events were the times when we really got a chance to interact. And funny enough, we didn't really talk about anything you would say boyfriend, girlfriend kind of thing. We'd really just be talking about God.
I mean, Church of God of Prophecy, young
Yeah.
people, back then, it's all Holy Ghost
Yeah.
sanctification, right? Seeing meeting Jesus, be ready when he
Be
come.
ready, yes. Now, there was this particular, I don't remember when exactly it was, but this particular day, I was praying. And I wasn't sure whether or not this is the Holy Spirit. But I felt this urge to say to her, this is not God's plan. Now, for me, I was afraid to say that to her because she was one of those delicate kind of young ladies.
Mm-hmm. Fragile.
Yeah. But for some reason, I felt the urge. So I went to UTech the day and we met, and we, were there. We're sitting on, it was when UTech had just made Sculpture Park. And we were sitting in, I think, one of the benches way down on Sculpture Park, and, we're across from the table. And I said to her, there's something I need to say to you. And then she said to me, there's something I need to say to you as well. So I didn't want to talk. So I said, okay, ladies first. And the same thing that I was about to say to her, she said to me. And I was like, God. So these little experiences got me to be grounded, like I was now saying, because this was still at college. So when I left Michael, when I came back home, I was like, God, whatever. Because I now realized that I could fully trust God, that He would do what is best for me.
That's amazing. That is amazing. That is absolutely amazing. Wow.
Well, the problem was, after that ended and I went back to church, there was a particular young lady I'd gone to school with. She had gone to Oberlin with me.
Mm-hmm.
And I liked her since then. And to be honest, I didn't ask God anything because I didn't want to hear the answer. I honestly didn't want to hear the answer.
Really? So you're not taking no chance to get God's approval? Now
This one, I'm like, God. So,
oh God, are you kidding me?
I remember I was at church and I was doing Bible studies, because at the time we didn't have a Bible studies, and my pastor, she said, do you want to do it? And I bought a concordance, and I was doing my own little studies and trying to teach as best as possible Bible studies in church. And at that time I had just gotten a telephone, because I was still living with my parents, but I was now teaching. I had my own money, I could pay my own bills, that sort of thing. So I had my own telephone in my room. And I remember every time that I did Bible studies at church, I would call her on the phone and I would do the same Bible study with her.
Oh, so you're probing technically.
The idea was, to be honest with you, the idea was that there would be the whole principle of being unequally yoked was something that was the church was a little firm on. And therefore I thought, listen, if you want this young lady, you have to get her saved.
Uh-oh.
So my
so she wasn't saved.
No, she wasn't saved. So I
Okay.
would do Bible study with the aim of trying to get her saved.
Oh Lord of mercy. Okay,
But
okay.
my intention wasn't to get her saved. My intention really was that this is the young lady I thought, would make a nice wife. So I did Bible study selfishly for that reason.
Wow. So your motive was completely
Yeah, my
wrong.
motive was wrong.
Wow.
But she eventually got saved.
Okay.
And there were a number of red flags, but I didn't want to see them.
Mm-mm.
I didn't want to see them. And I think things went on we were courting for about 2.5, 3 years.
Really?
Yes. Um,
In the church, you got a prophecy.
we were studying, and I would help her to
Okay.
study.
Wow.
Um, and I can firmly say that I was a gentleman.
All right.
And my pastor knew me well enough, and she knew, and we were at the time one of the couples in the church that people would look at and say, that's how Christians should court. And that made me feel good as well. But I still was doing it for the wrong reason.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It came to a point where we decided to build a house together because
Oh,
now we
really?
were close to getting married. So we had sat down, we had planned everything out. I saw the red flags, I ignored them.
Oh my
We were building a
goodness.
house together.
Wow.
And an incident happened, and the incident, she was absolutely rude to my mother.
Oh man.
Now, you remember the relationship I have with my mother. No,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't hide anything from her, so she also knew the relationship. Um, I don't want to get into exactly what happened,
Yeah, that's fine.
but she was unremorseful.
Wow.
And all those red flags that I saw came rushing home. And I
Wow.
realized I had blundered.
Wow. Wow.
Now, as I said, this was the tool that the devil used to pluck me away from the relationship that I had developed with Christ.
Wow.
Because when that happened, the church I grew up in, at this point, I was in church for maybe 13 years. And the church I grew up with, there's this idea that as the man, you're automatically to be blamed. You should just forgive and forget and move on and so on and so forth. But what had happened was something that I knew that if I continued, that I would never forgive her, and it would not be fair to her nor to me. It would be difficult for me to forgive her
Wow.
because of the relationship I had with my mom. And so when the church found out that, because they had now looked at this relationship as, this nice, perfect example of
Mm-hmm.
what
Mm-hmm.
relationship should be in the church. And when the church found out, I was given all the blame.
Mm.
And that experience, it hurt me so badly that I left the church and I went to
Oh.
live in Kingston.
Oh.
I didn't necessarily, well, let me put it this way. I didn't fully leave the church, but I left the church. And at this point, I was so hurt that I decided I did not want anybody else to court. I was not going to put myself through that again. And so anybody that I met after that, would be not about courting. It wouldn't be about anything to do with God. For that period, I guess I just blotted out everything. I knew what I was planning to do was wrong, but I still decided I'm done. I am not going to put myself through that again.
Wow.
So my mother though didn't know that, because I knew that if my mother knew that this was my thinking, that she would maybe break down because I had that relationship with her.
Wow.
And that was also one of the reasons why I left the community and went to Kingston. I would say thankfully enough that God loved me enough to still decide to be watching out for me. And I was on that pathway for about 2 years. And what changed was I met the woman that would become my wife. And how I met her at a job. I was working at, the school is no longer in existence. It's a school called IAE, Institute of Academic Excellence. I was head of mathematics there, and she worked in the accounts department. Now, she, strangely enough, and this is how sometimes God works. I saw her every day, and even though I was not in the church so much, there were still things about the church that had imprinted on my personality that I don't think I could not change it. It was just not a part of me. So she would come to work in some short skirts, mini skirts, and so on. And I'm like, nope. So I looked, but I didn't give the second look because
Wow.
I'm saying no. The first time I really got an opportunity to speak to her, we went to a staff trip. And after speaking, I realized that she was once a Christian. She was actually a backslider from the Church of God of Prophecy.
Wow, what a struggle.
So everything came around full circle.
What a struggle.
And at this point, even with all that, I was still, in my mind, I was still not seeing her as a wife. She was now someone, yes, I would speak to and approach because she was not who I initially thought she was. But I still wasn't thinking wife. And I still had my agenda at the back of my head.
Mm-hmm.
Until God intervened again.
Wow.
God intervened again. And I found myself to a point where, because what I was doing, I was using this persona of me being a Christian young man and so on and so forth. But that was not my intention, to try to get close to her. But by me doing that, it actually ministered to her. And she decided to give her life to Christ.
Okay.
And she decided, listen, if you want to be a part of my life, you also have to walk this path with me. And even when she said that, I was still in the back of my mind, still not fully committed to walk that path with her. I still had ulterior motives.
So by this time, you had a broken relationship with the Lord.
With Christ, yes, I did. And at that time, I cut ties with a lot of persons. People from Michael, from college, from UCCF, people I knew, people who had certain expectations. I felt ashamed. I was ashamed of who I was, who I had become, and therefore I purposely distanced myself from everybody.
It's interesting.
But God used that young lady, my current wife, to bring me back to Him.
Wow. Not what you were foreseeing at all.
I had plans, God had plans.
Not what you were foreseeing at all.
So we got to a point where I started going back to church because of her. Half in, half out. Still not fully there. At the time, I was living by Portmore, and so I was going to Power Faith Ministries. But Power Faith is a very large church, which was much different from Glengarth that I was coming from,
Mhm,
where I
mhm,
knew everybody, everybody else knew everybody. There was a kind of family relationship with brethren there.
mhm.
And I felt a bit lost in Power Faith. And I think that didn't help. And then, but eventually, as my relationship began to mend, I began to go back to Glengarth to have
Okay.
service there. And my relationship slowly began to mend until
Mhm.
we eventually got married. And that was when I would say my relationship with Christ, even though it was a shadow of what it was before, the intentions I had before went away. I was now committed to rebuild. I was now committed to do um, all the all the things I was doing before, but the fear came back. And so at this point, I was not willing to take on any leadership roles because now the idea that you have failed, this could likely happen again, you could likely lead people astray, all that crept back. And therefore, I decided I'm not going to do anything like that. I'm just going to keep my head under the radar and I'm going to go to church, come back home, and be a good family man, a good husband.
I keep saying, the Bible again. You're preacher, teacher, understand it. As a man thinks in his heart, so is he. There's life and death in the power of your tongue.
Yes.
You speak life, you get life. You speak death, that's what you get. I see the devil. I see God working hard with you, but I see the devil really progressing
Yes.
in distracting and derailing, because he make you think what is not God's will is just O'Neill's will. I know, there's a point when O'Neill want his will to be God's will,
Yes.
and not God's will to be his will.
Yes.
And that is always, will run you off the train line, and that happened. And the other thing is that, as Job, I think Job said, the things that I fear is come upon me. The very reason you were afraid of taking on pastoral responsibility is that you didn't want to fail like you see others fail. And now you failed before you take it on. So now when the devil is using that as a see what I tell you kind of thing, and that's exactly why, and now you're convincing yourself, my God, that's exactly why I didn't want
Well,
to
I didn't
take on
want to
that.
do it.
Exactly why I didn't want to do it. Because
That's
see,
it.
the thing that I fear is come upon me. What if I had done that? Now I'll become another failure like I saw others fail. So the devil is using this mind game, this psychological thing on you and say, oh, are you still gonna even try that? Because you'll fail again. Can you fail already? So man, how did that go for you? No, we got 35 minutes before to get to wherever what you want to take us. But this is
Oh,
fascinating stuff. I mean, this is really fascinating stuff. Just to listen the step by step. I've seen so much into this, where the danger of us trying to do our thing
yes.
and not doing God's thing. Because when we do our thing, we are almost bound to fail. But the other good thing in this is that God don't give up on us. In my morning devotion this morning, we are talking about he never throw the clay away.
Away. Yes.
He never throw the clay away. Broken, battered, bruised, wounded, he never throw the clay away. Because when he called you at the beginning, his plans were already in place. And human struggle and stumble and fall does not turn God away from you.
True.
It really doesn't. Sometimes the devil wants us to think like God does that pretty easily. Once you stumble and fall, God, get up, you're done now. No, that's a lie. Because when he called you and purpose is planning your life, He knew all the mistakes and the missteps you
That
would
would
make.
come.
He
Yeah.
see them down the road. He's not like running into it like you and me. We run into it and say, oh my God, God saw that. But all those are stepping stones and hurdles and lessons to learn.
Yes.
And I'm not counseling you, but the Lord has given me a thought in my spirit a couple of years ago, and every now and then I shared with some of my guests that one of these days God will unveil to you the mystery of your history
Wow.
when you're able to look back and put the pieces together, because you can't see it looking forward, but you'll see it when you look back. He'll unveil to
Sure,
you the
yeah,
mystery of your
of your
history.
history. I
When
like
you
that.
Yeah, everybody hear it like it the same
Yes,
way. One of these days, God will unveil to you the mystery of your
of your
history.
history.
Wow. And you're gonna feel like a failure. I'm worthless. I let God down. I let my mother down. I let my church down. I let everybody down. But God was also using that to teach you lessons.
Yes.
Experience teaches wisdom. So all of those things are pieces in together. It brings me back. It brings me to my book. Bring me to my book. Don't judge me by my scars or hold me hostage to my past.
Oh, I think I maybe need to get a copy of that book
Don't judge me by my scars or hold me hostage to my past.
to my past.
Man, wow. I'm talking to Oniel Francis. Now we got a half an hour, 34 minutes to tell me as much as you want. Where did your life go now? And how did it unfold? Man, this is just fascinating stuff that I'm hearing from you.
Um, After I would say God began just showing up. They were different. I had so many different experiences that I could just say, this is God, this is God. But that fear of really stepping out,
Mhm.
of really just letting go and letting God, that kept me from, I would say, getting to a point where I truly, truly was opening myself to be used by God. And I think in that period, there were a number of hardships, a number of struggles. There were struggles within my marriage.
Mm.
There were struggles in my professional life. I struggled financially. Like
Wow.
nothing could go right.
Wow.
And in everything that could not go right, I still did not realize what was it that God was saying to me. And there were periods when I would get hot and then cold again because that fear was just still there.
Mm.
That I would go this far and then not step further until I'm not sure exactly what changed because I used to have I used to have name for them, like periods in my life, and I would call it something like a wake up period,
Mm.
where God would do something awesome, and you would say, "Yes, God, no, I am now ready to launch out for you," and then you go right back down. And I had a number of these periods,
The
a
devil,
few
the devil is
years.
such a liar, man, a deceiver, and he's so crafty. He's so crafty that he never let you go. He just keep on reminding you of your failures.
Your failures, yes.
He reminds you because he want to hold you hostage.
I think what changed was I got to a point where I was tired of failing. I was tired of going back to the place where I was.
Mm. Wow.
And I began to ask myself, you know, where are you going? Because I was going on a path that took me back to the starting point of where I was each time. And then slowly I began to trust God. And things began to happen. My marriage began, like everything started to be fixed at the same time. My marriage, I got to the point in my marriage where I was almost divorced. Now
Wow.
my marriage began to heal. My finances began to recover. My professional life, I I would go to a class and an idea in terms of how to bring this lesson forward would just to the point where I had students, I had it because I'm currently not in Jamaica. And when I left Jamaica, people were still calling. When are you having your next session? I would teach every year. I would have a set of girls from Wolmer's Girls School that I would have classes with them. Um, I taught online. I did. I would. Things were just happening, and my students were successful. Um, I was at Campion for a few years. I taught there. I had excellent passes. I did additional mathematics at Campion. I went on to Hillel Academy. And then from Hillel, I left and came to the Netherlands. But for each of those journeys, I knew that that was God, that He was simply moving you from place to place, strength
Wow.
to strength. When I got
Wow.
here, because I got the opportunity before to go to the Bahamas, and for some reason, the Holy Spirit was saying, this is not you, this is not it. And years after, I look back at the Bahamas and I look, oh my God, the Bahamas just gave their teachers a lovely raise in salary. And I looked at that and I'm like, but I realized that that was just not God. And where I am now, I'm now currently in St. Eustatius. It's an island that I didn't know of before I came here. There were two occasions when God did this to me. He placed me somewhere in a country that I've never heard of this country before. He sent me there.
Wow. That's like Abraham from Ur to Canaan.
So I was previously I was in Azerbaijan. I had never
Mm.
heard of that country before I went there. Never.
Really? You gone that far?
Yes, I had never heard of that country before I went there. So
Woo-hoo. Wow.
God was just now beginning to show up, and I'm like, something is happening here. When I came here, I knew with 100% certainty that this was God. But I couldn't understand how God would do what He would do, in what way. And when I came here, I met persons, but I only met one person who was actually a Christian. And I'm like, God, what is happening here? I'm not meeting a lot of Christians. So how can, there's no lively Christian community here. And there's one fellow teacher that I met when I came here. And even this afternoon, we spent like an hour on the phone and we were just talking about the things of God and setting up a study group, prayer group, that sort of thing. But here, what I realized is that even though I came here, there were no strings, there was nothing. God took me from the original school which brought me here, and I switched to another school here, and the school is attached to a church. And the minute I came here, I realized that I have now been used by God in the church to bring forward His message to His people. And at this point in my life, I would say that I'm close to or maybe surpassing where I was in terms of my trust in God, in terms of having the attitude to say, God, whatever you want to do, however you want to use me, God, go ahead, I'm open.
Wow. Wow. Whew. My friend, I am talking to Oniel Francis, brother, teacher Oniel Francis, Minister Oniel Francis. This is, I mean, intriguing, fascinating twists and turns. We haven't taken a minute break. I'm gonna take 2 minutes break, and we come back and let him get a cup of water, a drink of water, and then when we come back, we try to wrap this up because this is just fascinating stuff. So hang in there, my friends. When we come back, we're gonna take it there, take it out.
ORB Ministries presents Truth Matters. Join the Truth Matters panel for discussions on issues of the times with host Dr. Orville Beckford Sr. and his panel consisting of Bishop Anthony Campbell, Dr. Danet Ming, Bishop Colin Powell, Reverend Hashana Knight, Pastor Shelley and Tony, Reverend Dr. Norman Grant, Bishop Carlton Chambers, and Evangelist Tanisha Beckford James. Nothing is off limits for discussion. Follow ORB Ministries on Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok. Subscribe, turn on notification, and get ready for the next hot topic on Truth Matters.
Every Wednesday, 8 p.m., join ORB Ministries on Let's Talk with the Doc, live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. There is a story, something to encourage and inspire you. You may even have a life-changing experience. You never know what's next or who will join the conversation. Stay connected. Subscribe to ORB Ministries YouTube channel. Follow on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
All right, we're back. We're back with teacher. We're back with teacher Francis. This is just really fascinating stuff. Really fascinating stuff. And I'm just trying to reflect back on your life. It's like, as my sister said, when it rains, it pours. It's like the darkest part of the night is just before day dawn. So I'm imagining that with everything apparently crumbling, like everything you touch it fail, and now after a while, like everything you touch now turn gold.
Yes.
So when you sit back, or you sat back then, and reflect on your own struggles, ups and downs, fears and failures, and now to see even your marriage almost fall apart, and now to see everything coming into place. How did you digest that? What was your reaction? Say, okay, everything is getting good. Is it like what everything was going bad, and then all of a sudden everything's getting good? How did you deal with that? What did you say to God? What did you say to Oniel?
With everything that changed, I knew why,
Okay.
and I didn't, because I knew what God wanted of me. Because as Christians, I believe that we do know what God expects from us, and when we don't deliver,
Mhm.
there are very few times that we do not understand why things are not going as well as they are. So for me, I
Okay.
knew that things were not progressing the way they were, that these areas were rocky because I had allowed the devil to have a foothold in my life. And the moment I decided that, listen, I'm just going to surrender everything and I'm whatever it is that, because you do know the areas as well.
Mm-hmm.
And when you decide that I am going to totally surrender and I'm going to ensure that whatever strongholds exist within my life, I'm going to ensure that through Christ, that you bind that strong man, you will see changes. And therefore, when the changes came, I knew exactly why the changes came. So it wasn't really a surprise for me. It was, and there are some things in your life that you know you should do. One of the things I struggled with for a very long time was procrastination.
Mm-hmm.
That there were things I knew I should do that I would maybe start doing and stop. And I knew that once I started, I knew. So when you pray, you're like, God, I know this is what I needed to fix. So once you got to the point where you're like, enough is enough,
Mm-hmm.
and you position yourself in Christ to ensure that you no longer fall into this habit. Your prayer life is where it ought to be. You fast, you pray, you begin to read the word. You do see changes. And I know it doesn't necessarily happen the same way for everyone,
Mm-hmm.
but I believe as Christians that even when we think we're saying, God, I don't know what else to do, and I think we do know. If you're a Christian who you're reading the word and you have a relationship with Christ, you will know.
Mm-hmm.
You may not know every single thing, but you know where to start. There are areas of your life that you can identify as areas that need to be fixed, and therefore you know where to start.
Do you forgive yourself, or you still struggle with your own conscious failures? Because when I say conscious failure, I mean like I know what I did wrong. I know what I shouldn't have done, and the consequence is because I didn't do what I should have done, or done what I shouldn't have done. How do you feel? Do you feel like, do you forgive yourself, or you blame yourself for the ups and downs of the experiences?
No. And
Okay.
I don't have, and it's not something that I'm saying, I should have and I could have, and it's my fault and so on. I think in the middle of my struggles, I had that kind of thought process. Every time things would get better and then they get worse, I would have that kind of thought process. But now I understand that even though it may not have been God's divine will for me to have struggled and to be feeling this more, but I took away something from each one of those stages.
Mm-hmm.
I realized, because it builds me, because now to move from point A to point B, I now understand the reason why it was not being, my actions were not sustainable. I understood what I needed to do more. So, for example, my prayer life was not as strong as it should have been.
Mm-hmm.
I now understand that that was a primary reason that gave the devil access. So now I know with 100% certainty that this is an area of my life I have to keep at it. I have to keep being strong. I have to be fervent in prayer. I have to ensure that I fast. I have to ensure that I feed up on the word. So for me, it is not so much that I blame or regret. I use those as stepping stones and I look forward. Honestly, no, I'm awaiting to see, God, what will you do next? That is kind of like my mindset. No, God, what's coming next?
Wow. My friends, I'm talking to Oniel Francis, and if you've been here with us, you hear the story and the journey and the ups and downs. Do And I know hindsight is 2020, and if I would have, would have, should have, could have. One point you made a while ago about knowing, and you're not blaming yourself. You see, change your mentality, change your attitude. As this morning, I think yesterday I read a thought on my morning devotion that a couple of days ago that 80%, 20% of your life are the things that happen to you. 80% is your reaction to that. So you have so much control over your own life that you can, that the things that derail us and cause us to struggle, if we had a different approach to a number of things, our lives would be different. But it's only when we look back sometimes we can say, man, I could
Hindsight
have.
is always 2020.
Hindsight is always 2020, and what I could have, should have do is always, if I had known, is always too late, never come on time, right? So it's always late. But man, fascinating story, fascinating journey. So where are you now, and where you go from here?
Um, to be honest, the second question I can't answer. That's up to God.
Okay.
Presently, I am on St. Eustatius. It's a part of one of the, well, it's called one of the best islands. It's Bonaire, St. Eustatius, and Saba. They are the Netherlands Antilles. So I currently work for the Dutch government.
Okay.
It's a small island, very peaceful island. It reminds me of the country, in the hills of St. Catherine where I grew up. So I feel right at home. The only drawback is that my wife and my son are currently not here with me, because my son, he attends Jamaica College. He's in high school.
Hmm.
And because of that, I did not want to uproot him from his education and bring him here. And Jamaica College does offer him a little bit more in terms of activities, opportunities, that sort of thing. And I really didn't want to shortchange him because of that. Additionally, the experience without my family has helped, because I honestly I really don't go out per se. So I've been able to use my time to focus more on the things of Christ.
Hmm.
So in terms of my Bible reading habits, that has improved. In terms of my prayer life, that, because there are less distractions. I have a very small circle of very, very close friends, but I speak to everybody. So I have been able to have a more focused life in terms of my Christianity. And I think that is also something that was deliberate by God. Honestly, I did not know how I would manage being away from my wife, being away from my family. And for the first year, it was extremely rough, especially when I know I would be going back to Jamaica to visit my family. Like, though, that last week, it was mentally frustrating. No, it's getting better, and I give God thanks. And I think because of my growth in Christ, I'm able to pour a lot more into my marriage. I'm able to pour a lot more into my son, even into my mother. My mother she's still alive. But even the last time I went back home, I was able to minister to her, to help. And I give God thanks because of what I have allowed myself to be available. I've allowed the Holy Spirit to be able to pour into me. I can now pour out into others.
Hmm.
And so I give God thanks for that.
Wow. Oh man, listen, this is interesting story. It is. I mean, that's the beauty of stories, because everybody's story is different and uniquely different, and but everyone has a story,
Yeah.
and you never know what you're gonna get when you talk to somebody about their story. You just don't know what the story is gonna be, and I never want to know insights, get insights into the story before I hear and air the story, because I want to tread this line of ignorance and become and be fascinated with everything that I hear, because I don't know what the next step was going to be.
Okay.
And because I don't like to have an agenda, because I don't want to think I missed something, that or you didn't tell me something that I thought you would have told me because I heard something somewhere else. This is just fascinating stuff. Now, how is your wife dealing, if you can say, if you wish to, again, you can say whatever you don't want, or what you can say, what, how are they dealing with your absence? I know, how you're dealing with their absence, your absence from them, but how are they handling it?
I think because this is my third year here, and I think I am acclimatizing to it, and I think she is as well. Um, my son that's the portion that I struggle a little bit with in terms of being there for him, because um, I'm not seeing a lot of effects in terms of my absence, because we do communicate on the
Yeah.
telephone.
Mhm.
But that's the only portion I worry about. Am I there enough for him? Does it does my the absence of my physical presence,
Mhm. Mhm.
is it what kind of effect it's having on him? But to be honest, we speak, and I give God thanks that to date I am not getting the sense that, in fact, I am so proud of him. I'm so proud of the things that he has accomplished. I listen to him speak, and I'm like, wow. And that's another thing as well. When you are absent and the only thing you can use to cover your family really is prayer, you have to give credit to God,
Mhm. Mhm.
because you know that's God.
Wow. Wow. Man, I wish you the best for your family, man. And I'm not gonna get into the internal stuff of it, and frequency and stuff like that. But can you figure that out, and your family figures that out? But man, just to look back, just to look back at 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 your journey, at your journey, I wonder if you sit back sometimes and say, God, did you ever make it this hard? Did you ever make it this hard? Did I have to? Could you just make it a little better? Do you have to put all this on my record? God, you couldn't get me here without all of some of the ups and downs and the struggles. Couldn't you just guide me differently? Did you have to make me go through all this to scar myself and on the journey?
I don't ask those questions now, but I used to ask them. There were times when I would cry. I was like, God, why me? Why are things so tough? Why are things
Mm-hmm.
so difficult? Um, and it would be at that point you would put yourself in a season where you begin to compare,
Mm-hmm.
and you compare yourself to others who you think, you may have had similar starting points, and you're like, God. And there are just so many things now that I give God thanks for, and it has made me appreciate the journey.
Mm-hmm.
I look at my marriage, and I am not sure a lot of people can say, "Listen, I am happy," and I can truly say that I'm happy. I love my marriage. I love my wife. I love my family. Uh, I look, and even I think it was yesterday. My wife and I were talking on the phone, and we're like, looking back, and we're saying, babe, remember this time, remember, so it has been, I would say, at this stage it's fulfilling.
Mm-hmm.
And because of the experiences I've had with Christ, it makes you long for more. It makes you look for more. So, and I know it might not be what I expect, but the great thing is that I have learned to trust Him.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Wow. This is a great story. Um, but again, there are many lessons to learn from the story, many lessons to learn for people who are listening. But one of the lessons, and I must say, you give yourself credit. Give yourself credit for holding out. Give yourself credit for 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 hitting the rocks over and over,
Mm.
and still get up and find something new to keep on going. Again, if I could say, as you say, we give credit to God. And somebody said the reason why God allow you to face so many hard battles, because you are a trusted soldier. He
Oh,
can trust you. He can trust you to fight through the battles. Come back to my thought again. One of these days, God will unveil to you the mystery of your history.
okay.
He will show you, you know, all the reasons behind these pieces, the struggles. And I said this again to I think that thought is in my book as well. I preach that as well. Your journey is not your destiny, but you can't get to your destiny without your journey. And journey could be difficult and complicated, but destiny is where God wants to take you.
Yeah.
One of the reasons why Israel had problems and God had problems with Israel is because they forget that He promised them destiny, and they get caught up with the journey, and because of that, they didn't make it to the destiny. Those who left Egypt didn't make it to the promised land, except Caleb and Joshua. All those who made it, those were born on the way, around Sinai Mountain. Those are the young ones who made it to the promised land. So our journey could be really difficult and complicated, but destiny is important. Another thought that I share frequently: there's a reason why your windshield is maybe 100 times or more bigger than your rear view mirror.
Mm. Yes.
Right? Because you're supposed to only glance where you're coming from. Glance where you're coming from. And use it as history. Where I'm coming from is my history.
Yes.
Where
Like
I'm
a
going is
reference
my
point.
destiny.
Mhm.
My big windshield is focused where you're going. Every now and then glance and remind yourself where you're coming from. Take a quick look, small look, but stay focused on where you're going.
Where you going?
So that is important. Where you're coming from is lessons learned. Where I'm going from is my pursuit of my destiny and where God wants me. Um, God's children never always have smooth journey to get where God want them. As a matter of fact, scarce you can find anybody in history
Well, that's good, John.
who had
True.
smooth
True.
journey, right? Scarcely can you find anybody who had a smooth journey. We could look at so many of God's people who say, I'm quit, I quit, I'm done. Jeremiah said, I'm not even gonna call God's name in my mouth again. I'm done with this. But then the fire that was in his bone kept him alive and kept him going.
Amen.
My friend, maybe listen. I guarantee you we'll talk again some other time. My friends, I've been talking to. We're gonna go off like how we came out. But my friends, I thank you for joining me on this broadcast. Thank my friends who are on radio. Thanks my TikTok friends. Thanks my YouTube and Facebook friends for joining me on this conversation with Minister Teacher Oniel Francis. And maybe when you feel the time comes, you can say, I want to talk to you again. The door is open. We can have part 2 of this conversation, because I'm sure there's some things that we haven't talked about yet that time wouldn't allow us tonight to do it. But I look forward to having another conversation with you again. My friends, thank you for joining me on this broadcast. I look forward to seeing you again next week on another Let's Talk with the Doc. And if anybody on TikTok you don't know, join me on Morning Devotion tomorrow morning, live on TikTok, a Ministry of Hope and Healing, where we're going to do it all over again. My friend, thank you for joining me. I will see you. Stay there, Oniel. Make sure follow, subscribe, and stay connected, because you never know what's next or who will join the conversation. I'll see you again, my friends. Well, thank you for checking in on ORB Ministries. I trust that you will share with your friends, subscribe, hit the bell for notification, and stay tuned, because you never know what's next or who will join the conversation.